Now, the reason I asked you all over here is because I want you to meet Father James Keller, who is coming by in just a few minutes. He wants to talk to you about making a movie. Now, I know that everybody in Hollywood wants to make a movie, but this fellow happens to have a very good idea for one. You see, Father Keller is the head of the Christophers. Now, as some of you may know, the main idea behind this movement is to encourage more good, decent, normal people to take up careers that strongly affect the fate of this country. Like education, government, labor management, and in the fields of writing, like newspapers, books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and television. Now, I know this is a pretty big order, but the Christopher movement has been sweeping the country. So much so that it has reached a point where Father Keller has been able to cover only a small portion of the invitations for talks on the Christophers. And he thinks that a picture explaining the idea would be a good substitute for a talk.
I think it's a good idea.
I think it's an excellent idea, don't you?
Father Keller.
Oh, hello, Father.
Hello, Father.
I suppose Jack told you that the chief purpose of the Christophers is to get more people of high purpose into the vital fields that affect, for better or for worse, the lives of the majority of mankind. The fields of teaching, government, writing, labor, social service, and library work. And Jack mentioned that we were interested in one picture. As a matter of fact, I'd be interested in lots of pictures on the Christopher idea, because I don't know of any medium in which we could reach the millions of people more effectively through the motion pictures. And you seem to have a question.
Well, you know, I suppose it is a good thing to get into one of those fields, but, Father, it's not quite so easy for young people to get any kind of job these days.
Well, that's just the point, Ann. As long as it is difficult, why not try for a job that counts? Instead of just taking something where you're filling in time between 9 and 5, why not get a job where you're doing something, a job with a purpose?
Oh, a job with a purpose. So you can whistle while you work.
Yes, very good, Ann. That's the way to put it. Whistle while you work. But it's really much more than that, too. I'm convinced we're on the brink of the greatest peace the world has ever seen, or the worst disaster.
You make it sound like a matter of life and death, Father.
But, Bill, I really feel it is. Here we are in the greatest country in the world, about the only country left intact. And whether we like it or not, I'm afraid, as America goes, so goes the world.
Why, Father, that's a frightening thought.
Yes, Loretta, but a glorious challenge. It's a wonderful time to be alive. Just think, a little handful of people can change the whole course of history.
Well, maybe more than a handful.
I mean, just that, a handful. 1% is nothing more than a handful. And just think what that 1% has been doing to mess up the world. And they get in the fields that count.
That's right. You never see any of those, pardon me, Father, chaps out at the ball game selling hot dogs. No, you don't.
You're right you are, Paul. They're in there pitching. Call them what you like, they have one thing in common. They hate the basic truth on which our nation is founded, that every human being is a child of God, that he gets his rights from God, and that the purpose of state is to protect those God-given rights. They, every one of them, get into fields where they can eliminate that truth.
So the purpose of the Christopher movement is to spark enough people to get them into the same fields and work as hard to build as they do to destroy.
Yes, Bill, that's just it. I'm really convinced that we can find enough people who will be fired with the love of God and country, who will gladly get into these vital fields, dedicate their lives, and get into government and teaching and all the rest of these important spheres, and work hard to keep in there that basic truth in which our country is founded, to be for what these other people are against. The number one item is the Declaration of Independence. No, that's not everything, but it's mighty important. I don't think many people realize the close connection that the founders of our country explicitly stated was between God and country. Over and over again, they emphasized that was the cornerstone of our liberty. Then 4 times in the Declaration of Independence, they repeated over and over again that our liberty depends upon God.
That's right.
Do you know the Declaration, Paul?
Naturally. It goes as follows. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them.
Remarkable, Paul. You're one of the first persons I've ever met that know that much of the Declaration. There's something I have here I'd like to show you. Right in the very first sentence of the Declaration, it states very explicitly that all law flows from God. And then there's another reference to God in the very next sentence.
The very next sentence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Amazing, Paul. And he knows it word for word, too. Here's an odd thing about that second reference to God. It wasn't in the first version at all. It's a straight write-in. Here it is, a photostatic copy of the original draft. The first version said, all men are created equal, and from that equal creation, they derive certain inalienable rights. But apparently, they want to emphasize the point still more. So you can see where Jefferson crossed out the phrase, from that equal creation, they derive certain inalienable rights, and wrote in the phrase, they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Now, that's not the only change that was made in the Declaration. When it was submitted to the first Congress, they made several changes, several deletions, but they insisted on only 2 additions, and both those additions were reference to God, and they're both in the last paragraph.
The last paragraph.
The last paragraph. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world.
Very good, Paul. Appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world. That's just the point they want to emphasize. And then again in the last paragraph.
And for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on divine providence.
Thanks a million, Paul. You were a big help.
No reflection, Paul, but how did you learn all of that?
Yeah, I'd like to know, too.
Well, the teacher used to keep me in after school a lot. I bet I wrote that in the blackboard 5,000 times. I'll say this for the woman, though. She didn't have me writing cat and dog or Paul was a bad boy. She must have a lot of that Christopher purpose we've been talking about.
And all of this stands out ever so much more clearly when you think of what Adolf Hitler and Karl Marx said about their idea of the worth of the human being. Here are Hitler's words. He said, to the Christian doctrine of the infinite significance of the individual human soul, I oppose with icy clarity the saving doctrine of the nothingness and insignificance of the human being. And Karl Marx put it a slightly different way, but his idea was just the same. He said, the democratic concept of man is false because it is Christian. The democratic concept holds that each man is a sovereign being. This is the illusion, dream, and postulate of Christianity.
Well, is it correct to say, then, that the Christophers are an anti-communist movement?
No, the problem as we see it is this. It's getting good people in, getting the good citizen to do his part in saving our country and saving the world.